All right, welcome to the Power 2 Pod. My name's Andy,
And I'm Jason.
and this is going to be our Week 11 preview. This week we have a couple games in the SEC, especially looking at Alabama LSU, which is going to kind of be an elimination game. It's hard to see the loser of this game getting into the college football playoff with both teams already having 2 losses. What are your thoughts on the Alabama LSU elimination game?
I definitely like Alabama in this one. Granted, traveling to Baton Rouge in a night game is no small feat. But I just feel like Alabama's been a little bit more of a consistent team than LSU. Their offense is really good, but then it just will fall off the cliff, and they just don't have answers when they need to make adjustments. So, I do think Alabama will win this one. Right now, they're favored by a field goal on the road, so I do give the edge to Alabama,
I mean,
and
yeah,
I see Alabama kind of winning out and trying to get guarantee a spot in that playoff without making the SEC championship game.
Yeah, if I'm looking, like I said, it's definitely an elimination game. Neither one of these teams are going to get in with 3 losses, I don't think. I don't know. There's something about Brian Kelly. He's not great in big games, but he's beaten Bama before. He beat Saban, and this isn't Saban's Alabama. I think there's definitely an opportunity here for LSU to keep trucking and keeping that dream alive for the college football playoff. After the rankings, they're sitting at number 15, where Alabama's at number 11. You just see those flip-flop, basically, if LSU wins for the most part. Nussmeier definitely has to be better with the ball. He's got to stay away from the turnover. The same thing with Milroe. He's been pretty turnover-prone this year. So, it's the old cliche, whoever wins the turnover battle is probably going to win this game, just based on, both quarterbacks kind of being turnover-prone. And you look at LSU, Nussmeier kind of had a slight Heisman campaign going until, the Texas A&M game last week, where, that would have been a huge win for LSU. Kind of would have, they'd been coming into the Alabama game with 1 loss, and if you lose to Alabama, it's not such a big deal at that point. But now, it's every game matters. This is why, even going to a 12-team playoff, both these teams are still fighting for that spot in the playoff. And what's really cool is I feel like the 12-team playoff has made more games more important. Here we are in week 11, and we have an elimination game, basically. But yeah, like I said, I think this game comes down to turnovers. That line's moving between 3 and 2.5. But it's hell to play in Death Valley at night. They cause earthquakes there, and they're going to be hyped up just because it's Alabama. So I could definitely see, a raucous atmosphere, which, same thing kind of happened at Tennessee. Tennessee brings it too. Alabama didn't quite meet the moment against Tennessee. Can they meet the moment on the road and beat an LSU team who is really good at home and keep whoever, like I said, whoever wins keeps their hopes alive in this 12-team playoff?
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, LSU. If LSU ends up beating Alabama, then they got one leg up on Ole Miss as well, beating them in overtime a couple weeks ago. And then, like I said, if Georgia beats Tennessee, like I said, LSU's right up there, and they could, if they win out, they could finish, second or third in the SEC, most likely third. But yeah, it's definitely an elimination game regardless. Another ranked matchup in the SEC will be Georgia has to travel to Ole Miss. Right now, Georgia's favored by 2.5, but I I suspect that to be even by the time the game comes. Ole Miss has been putting up a lot of points the last couple weeks, but Georgia's defense ever since I would say probably even before the Texas game have really dialed in that defensive side of the ball to really slow down these offenses. So I definitely think it'll be a closer game than it was last year. Georgia kind of ran away with it last year in Athens, but it's hard. Lane Kiffin. I truly respect him as a coach. I actually like him as a coach. but he's another one that usually never meets the big game expectations. The need. He's got to win, makes a difference. He usually always comes up short. Kind of gets his own head. So, but another one is Georgia has to take care of the ball on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, Carson Beck has been horrible at taking care of the ball. I think it's 6 interceptions in the last two, 11 on the season total. So right now, I feel like Carson Beck is Georgia's biggest liability, and Ole Miss has a good defensive front that can kind of create pressure without bringing a blitz. So if Georgia can't maintain a running game, I could see them struggling. But I definitely think this is going to be a close game regardless. But I do give the edge to Georgia just on Kirby being able to outcoach Kiffin.
Right. It's Kiffin falls into the James Franklin territory of the SEC for me, where
Yeah.
I'm not going to believe you can win the big game until I actually see you do it. Same. I'm not gonna believe you can beat the Georgia, the Alabama until you actually do it. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
they fall into Kentucky at home and LSU, which Kentucky, sure, they have a good defense. Georgia's defense is better. And losing to LSU, that's kind of the opposite side where they got, kind of got out offense there. But if you look at what Ole Miss does in big games under Lane Kiffin, it's nothing special. So until he breaks that mold, I really don't see a reason to go with Ole Miss until he actually does it. Which, for Ole Miss, they have to win out basically to get into the college football playoff. The Kentucky loss is going to hurt. And as far as their wins go, I mean, like I said, they lost to Kentucky. They've lost to LSU. So if you're looking, who's their best win against? Wake Forest, South Carolina. South Carolina is probably their best win. Because Oklahoma, Arkansas have all fallen off.
Yeah,
And this
which
is
that South Carolina team is a 5-3 team. It's not great, and this was Lane Kiffin's year. He missed Alabama, he missed Texas. Um, like you said, the biggest two games on the schedule were LSU, which he dropped, and then now he gets Georgia at home. So yeah, if he doesn't beat Georgia this week, he has no key victories at all. You said, yeah, they put up a lot of points against subpar teams, but that only gets you so far. When you don't have those marquee wins, you're at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at the rest of their schedule, it's Florida and Mississippi State after this. So this is kind of their last chance to make a memorable impression on the committee as hey, you do belong in this. Definitely, if Ole Miss loses, they're kind of out of the conversation, and the Georgia train keeps on rolling. Another game of note in the SEC I see is Oklahoma versus Missouri. See, it's kind of getting hot for Brent Venables in Oklahoma. They thought he was the guy, and now all of a sudden you got quarterback issues and, just team just not looking that good, really. So I think that's definitely an interesting game worth talking about here in the SEC. Because if you look through Oklahoma, I mean, their best win is probably Auburn, and they haven't been competitive in a lot of games. They got blown out by South Carolina, the Tennessee game, closer than it appears. They lost by 10, but that game was never really that close. Tennessee kind of took their foot off the pedal there against them. There's nothing really this season that shows Brent Venables is the guy for Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley is kind of killing two programs at once here.
Yeah, and to me, it's pretty surprising. To me, I thought that Venables was going to be good, and I thought it was going to help moving to the SEC, even though it's more of a gauntlet than the Big 12. But, he was part of that Clemson team that went toe-to-toe against Alabama for, those few years. They went back-to-back or back and forth between Alabama and Clemson when national championships. I figured, he was part of a coaching staff that was able to beat the SEC teams. So I thought that he was going to be able to do that at Oklahoma, but I think his biggest downfall is just not being able to land a good quarterback. He had Dylan Gabriel. He ended up transferring out. Now they got Jackson Arnold, and he's not good. Now they're throwing in another guy. I can't think of his name, but it's just a revolving door, and that's just the number one thing that you need in college football is an above average quarterback, if not an elite quarterback, to make the difference to go win out games. But yeah, this is a game of struggling programs. Missouri ended last year 8th overall in the nation, and now they just do not look like the same team. Their offense is struggling, and I think that coach is kind of almost in over his head right now. Going through the SEC, I think they had the most players drafted this last year, in the last decade. So he's kind of getting the taste of you have to sit there and reload and be ready for the next year, or you're gonna sit there and be a 3, 4, 5 loss team by the end of the day. So, like you said, I feel like this game could be kind of a make or break.
If you look at Oklahoma's schedule, I mean, they're fighting for bowl eligibility. They're sitting at 5 wins. They got ranked Missouri. Then they have ranked Alabama and ranked LSU. So you could very well see this season going 5-7, missing a bowl game, which would be a huge step back for this program when they were looking to take a step forward with Jackson Arnold this year. Moving on to the Big Ten. Biggest game probably on the schedule is going to be the Michigan visiting Indiana. Just another, I think this game it's a statement game for Indiana. Like, you're going against one of the big boys, even though they haven't had the best year. You're still going against, a name brand, basically, which is kind of what Indiana's fighting right now. They're fighting that their name is Indiana, that, they have the IU logo on their helmet. That's what they're fighting right now. A win against Michigan, especially a dominant win, if they win like they have been winning by, 3-4 scores, it'll definitely go a long way, I think, for getting their recognition that they want. Right now it's sitting at a 14-point spread, so right now it's sitting at 2 touchdowns. I think anything less than that will kind of be a disappointment. I think they really need to make a statement, and they got to go for some style points to move up in the rankings.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I feel like this is going to be kind of their first test to be tested on the defensive side of the ball, because Michigan, even though they're on kind of a down coaching changes, quarterback controversy type things, they can still grind out a game. Look at the USC game. They absolutely dominated on the ground. They shortened that game, shorten up the offensive opportunities for their opponent. And that's what I would expect Michigan's game plan to be this week, is to just try to run it right down their throats, just eat away at that clock, just to give Indiana's offense not on the field is the key. But yeah, if Michigan tries to go toe and toe with Indiana, Indiana will shoot them out. There's nothing that Michigan has shown me this year anyways that they can slow down the Indiana offense. So their best bet is to keep them off the field.
Yeah, they definitely have to, play keep away, basically. Where they might be able to dominate is going to be in the trenches. I don't know if Indiana's seen an offensive line or defensive line as good as Michigan's. So I think that's definitely something to look out for, is Indiana hasn't seen the trench play of Michigan, but the rest of Michigan is not good. I mean, if you look, Indiana beats them in the quarterback category, wide receiver category. I don't know. Will Johnson's not back yet, I don't think. So, I mean, looking at that defense, Indiana probably has the better linebackers and secondary. So it's gonna come down to if Michigan can, like you said, play keep away, make this a 17-14 type game somehow. If anything over that, I think Michigan's done for. I don't know if they can, unless they can just run down the throat of Indiana. I don't think Michigan can score more than 14 or 17 points against Indiana. That's just what Indiana's been doing all year. Other than that, we do have the whiteout this week for Penn State, the official whiteout, not the whiteout energy or The Ohio State home game, we have the official once a year whiteout. We have Washington coming to town. Game actually did get bumped to 8 p.m., so it is a night whiteout, like, we've all been clamoring for. Big bounce back game. Like, gotta have it, The committee respects you, putting Penn State at number 6. So it's one of those games where you just absolutely have to have it, and it wouldn't hurt to be impressive doing it. Just to, show the committee that you're still one of the top teams because you're at home, and this is another one of those areas where Penn State sometimes makes one loss turn into 2 losses. You can't have that. I don't think the strength of schedule is not there, and the wins aren't there for Penn State to drop another game this season. I think they need to finish out. They're going to be favorites their last 4 games. So it's time to, nut up, shut up, and play the game and do what you're supposed to do. Take care of business and hope for redemption in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they really got to show it on the offensive side of the ball, which, like I said, they have a good chance. They have a good chance to have a rebound game. Washington has really struggled on the road this year, and it's kind of funny because, like, looking at their last three away games, they scored 16, 17, and 18 points. They haven't scored more than 20 points in the last 3 away games, so, expect Penn State to try to come out and score, put up 30, 40 points to really pass that eye test. And, like you said, their eye test against Ohio State was their offense struggled. And they kind of failed on some red zone opportunities. If you put up a good amount of points this week, I think it kind of gets hands off. It's like, all right, they lost the number 2 team in the nation. They're still a good contending playoff team. But like I said, this Washington team, they beat Michigan. They were able to, get a few turnovers on the defensive side of the ball. So I know Drew Alar is still probably not 100% with his leg. So like you said, you just got to be able to protect him and don't, just take care of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, good teams win, great teams cover. It's time to cover. James Franklin, he'll say that he doesn't know the spreads or any of that, but he's usually pretty good at covering a spread, especially again when he's like a double-digit favorite. He's pretty good at covering the spread against those. So, like, it's time to show up and put together a full game again. Show why this team is ranked number 6. If you're the number 6 team in the country, you don't struggle with Washington at home with the whiteout. Whiteout should provide any energy that you're missing from, the heartbreak of last week. So whiteout should make up for that. I think it was strategically planned that way as well because they knew Ohio State wasn't going to be a night game. Hey, let's put the week after Ohio State, so there's no reason to come out flat. I think there was some strategy involved in that. Let's move on because, like I said, there's not much going on in the Big Ten as far as, like, importance of games. So let's move on to our bets on campus here. Odds on campus, where we select 3 bets that we kind of like seeing in this. If I'm looking at spread or an over, it really kind of hits my fancy in the Big Ten. I think it's going to be Iowa minus 5.5 at UCLA. Friday night game, and I know we do have, the Big Ten teams struggle going coast to coast, but, Iowa's showing some life with their backup quarterback that came in. He was able to do a little bit more than McNamara's been able to do all season. So I think this could be really kind of a turning point for Iowa. Spread's minus 5.5. I could see Iowa shouldn't have a problem beating UCLA by a touchdown and covering that 5.5.
Yeah, I agree. Moving to the SEC, like I said, Georgia Ole Miss game. Right now, Georgia is favored minus 2.5, but I honestly would just take the money line on Georgia. It's minus 138. Still a good number. I definitely like that. Like I said, I just don't see Georgia dropping the ball against Ole Miss. I think they'll definitely have a game plan to slow down that offense. And like I said, hopefully Carson Beck protects the ball and doesn't throw 3 turnovers again this week. So I'll go with the Georgia money line.
All right. Next game, I'm going to highlight the number one team in the nation, Oregon. They're hosting Maryland. Afternoon game for the Ducks, night game for us. Spread is Oregon minus 25. I think there's no really sense of letting the foot off the gas with Dan Lanning and the Oregon team. So I'm seeing that spread. I'm seeing what Maryland's kind of done the last few weeks. And I really think Oregon is going to cover this minus 25 point spread, win by 28 or 30. Just don't see Maryland doesn't have what it takes to keep up with Oregon. I'm kind of seeing Ohio State might be the only team in the Big Ten that can. And I think Oregon at home, they got the number one ranking still. I just don't see a letdown with Dan Lanning against Maryland.
Yeah, I think Lanning's just gonna keep rolling with it. His team's hot, so just keep playing ball. Is the name of the game when you're on top. Moving back down to the SEC, another key matchup will be Alabama going to LSU. The total points right now is 58.5. I think the better part of that would be the under 58.5. I think, Alabama will struggle a little bit with the crowd noise, especially in the first half. I think that kind of slows down their offense a little bit. Maybe, you've seen some undisciplined tendencies from Alabama earlier this year. Just stupid penalties and just not being focused. And then Alabama.
Yeah, looking at the rest of the slate here in the Big Ten, I think I'm going to take Penn State minus 13 against Washington. I've seen some of the players' tweets and coaches and how they're kind of going about this. It doesn't seem like the same old Penn State who will drop a game and then come out flat. They really seem disappointed and motivated from the Ohio State game, and they know everything that they're still trying to achieve this season is achievable. Like you went out against four inferior teams. You make the college football playoff. You're hosting a college football playoff game. Like that was the goal coming into the season. Host a playoff game, and then see what happens once you're in. So I'm gonna stay with my team and hope they don't let me down and take Penn State minus 13.
Yeah, like you said, Franklin does do pretty good covering the spread, especially when it's in his favor. I would say my next game, I want to leave that for my lock of the week. So I will go to Tennessee, Mississippi State for my third one. It's another one that is the spread is 23.5. Total points are 61.5. I am actually going to bet the under on that one. Tennessee's offense hasn't been as explosive as we've been accustomed to, and Mississippi State is a very up and down team. They actually put up a decent amount of points against Georgia, but I feel like Georgia is playing just kind of a base defense. They had the lead and we're just trying to drain clock. So, and Tennessee has a really good defense, so I think they'll really put it to them. Like you said, they're kind of on the outside looking into those playoffs. Like you said, whether they can host a playoff game. So I think they put it to Mississippi State, but I think it'll be a little bit lower scoring than what you would expect out of Tennessee. Last year or 2 years ago, I'd say they'd almost hit 60 on their own. But I just don't see it happening this week, so I do the under 61.5.
Hate rooting for the under, but it does make sense. As you talked about, lock of the week, saving a game for the lock of the week. I'm saving the Indiana minus 14 for my lock of the week. I've been on that Indiana wagon kind of since from the start of the season. You called me crazy, but here we are. They're 9-0. I didn't expect 9-0. I mean, I was predicting 6-0, 7-0. But here they are, 9-0, hosting Michigan, reigning national championship winner. Spreads minus 14. Like I said, they're going to be looking to make a statement. They're behind some one-loss teams in the college football rankings, and I could really see them, like I said, if they get ahead, I don't see them letting off the gas and just calling it good with a win. Like, they're going to go for some style points because they need it with the committee, and That's why I'm going to go lock of the week. Indiana minus 14, just because they need to make a statement with the committee and, you know, move up in the rankings rightfully.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. My lock of the week is South Carolina going to Vanderbilt. They have South Carolina favored -3.5. I'm actually going to take those points for Vanderbilt. This has been a really different Vanderbilt team. The last, at least the last 2 years, they've struggled to get 1 or 2 wins, and now they're already bowl eligible at 6-3. And, this is probably one of the better Vanderbilt teams probably since the James Franklin era, to be honest. And they've been playing at home really well. They only lost by 3 points to Texas. They beat Alabama. So I definitely think it's definitely a different team when they play at home. And South Carolina's been hot and cold. I think if they can contain Sellers and let him just run away with it, I definitely like the 3.5 plus 3.5.
All right, that'll do it for the Power 2 pod. Thanks for watching and listening. And like I said, like, subscribe, and review. And that's our week 11 preview.
See ya.